Hello, I'm Mike Golding,
Hi, I'm Jeremy Chandler.
and today we're going to talk to you about the flowchart. Simply as defined is a flowchart is basically a diagram which is basically annotated with a lot of geometrical features that describe how an operation or function will be used and how the sequential flow of it would go from one to another.
And the flowchart is highly visual, so it's really easy to be able to demonstrate this kind of sequential process. The ANSI is a nonprofit organization, and they've kind of given us a standard on the different shapes that we can use and connectors. We have the flow line, which is a very simple arrowhead, and that connects the different processes. It has the arrow so we can see kind of going from one step to the next. And then a terminal would be a start point or an end point in the process. Then we have the square or rectangle, which is a general process. And that would be something more involved that would kind of a step that we have to go through. A decision would be where you kind of decide yes or no which path to follow. Whether to go and do the one thing or the other, depending on a question that you have to ask yourself. And then the different connectors, you have the on-page connector and the off-page connector, are to help with the flow if you have really big flow charts. And in order to make it so it doesn't stay super cluttered, you can kind of declutter everything and make it so you don't have lines going in every direction. Kind of keeps it more orderly and easier to follow. Then you have some predefined processes that maybe you have kind of shown off in a different flowchart you want to still include, and that's what that series of rectangles is for. You had comments and different input moments, but all of these can be used depending on what your flowchart will look like. It could be more complex or more simple.
A simple example of this would be right here, where we have a terminal star right here that goes into a process of reading the input. And we come to our first decision of whether this is the last record of where we have to print out names. If it's not, then we go to the next process of printing the name and then adding 1 to the counter, and repeating until we come to the last record, where we will stop our function.
So the two major upsides of a flowchart is just how visual the process is, and it allows you to see really easily the sequential flow. And it's a really easy, simple way to communicate the intent of your design. Glanceable information.
Now some downsides are where if you have to alter basically part of the flowchart, you might have to run across the risk of having to redo the entire chart. That way everything continues going through that sequential flow. And furthermore, since it's so sequential, it only works in that kind of process where if things really start to branch off, then we really can't use this.
So we looked at our SDD document and we pulled out section 5.11, state dynamics viewpoint. And that talks about the different things we might use third-party applications for. And one would be a third-party compiler. So we built a flowchart about what it might kind of look like to use a flowchart to show this process.
And basically this starts with the terminal, like how does the user trigger the compiler? And if so, yes, we go to the next part of about is the file ready to be sent off? And whether yes or no, we continue to format, whether it's yes, we generate the correct file format for the third-party API, and we determine whether the compiler is finished, and then we send back the results.
If the answer is no, we would send a try again later message to the user because the file isn't ready to be sent off yet. And then there's this one moment where we have the loop where whether the API is finished or not, we need to wait for it to finish. So that's the keep waiting loop we have down there with the process where we just wait for it to finish. It's a third party, so it could take time. But once it finishes, we can send the results back.
Thank you for your time.